But right here, buddy, that's a tattoo.
Wow, that's David Dunham.
Fact or fiction?
Eric Dungey had no chance away. Flips it to Watkins again.
This is the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show, presented by Pump Monkey Septic Services.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. Today is November the 9th, and Clemson has now recorded at least one win against an AP Top 20 squad in Death Valley in 9 consecutive seasons, with Saturday's win against 12th-ranked Notre Dame. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. How's it going, Matthew?
You know, I'm still somewhat in shock from how this game went Saturday. I know we talked about it last week, but I came into it just not expecting anything and pretty much, frankly, expecting a blowout on the other side of the ball. So, great win.
I think I said last week that from here on out, I'm going to every game with no expectations. I went in Saturday with no expectations, and especially in that first half, was pleasantly surprised. But a big win for the Tigers, and we're going to talk about the game. But if Clemson plays the way they did in that second quarter the rest of the season, then they should win out. But we know how this team can flip-flop on us.
Yeah, you pretty much said it's something I'm going to say probably later in the episode. So,
but saw a lot of Irish fans in the crowd this past week. They traveled well. It was a beautiful day. The tailgate started a little cold. I believe it was 33 degrees when we got out there to tailgate that morning, but by the end of the first quarter, I was in a t-shirt sitting in our seats. So couldn't ask for a better a day for college football. And you got what hopefully will be another beautiful weather day that's coming up for Military Appreciation Day. But big win for the Tigers. Dabo with a fiery speech after the win. Did you buy any Clemson stock this week, Matthew?
I didn't notice it on the Robinhood app, so I didn't. But if it pops up as whenever the IPO happens, let me know.
So what were your general takeaways from Saturday?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get into it. I just rewatched the game like a couple hours before we started recording this, so it's pretty fresh on the mind. I really like the play call where Mafah scored his first touchdown in the first quarter. We ran like a fake jet motion with Adam Randall, and that like triggered a safety blitz on the side that Adam Randall motioned from, and we just handed it to Mafah instead, and Mafah got outside of the blitzer and was untouched to the end zone. So I think that's a really great play call scheme wise, especially I know Clemson does that a lot too. We like to blitz a safety to a weak side off of a motion, so it's good anticipation from the offensive staff knowing that that's what they were going to do. Another thing that was a big factor in this win was special teams. I'm sure we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but special teams is something we've talked about on this podcast a lot. And yeah, and like it was a great special teams day. Aiden Swanson, I believe, had 5 of 6 of his punts downed inside the 20, and Cade Klubnik had his only punt downed inside the 20 also. That crazy. Swanson, I think he had a great day, but he did have one mistake where, sorry, my camera's moving out of focus. There we go. Okay. He did have one play. I don't know what happened, but we inserted Aiden Swanson on kickoff duty one time, and that was the kick that went out of bounds and gave Notre Dame the ball at the 35. So, but great day otherwise for Swanson.
I was going to say that particular play threw me for a loop because after the game, Ross Taylor and a bunch of people were promoting that the game was penalty free, and I was like, well, what about that kick out of bounds?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I learned something new. Apparently, that that is not a penalty unless they accept it and redo the kick and take the 5 yards. So that was something I did not know. So even though the flag was thrown and the ball was placed at the 35-yard line, did not count as a penalty. Which I believe it was the first time since the 50s, maybe, that Clemson played a penalty-free game.
I think I heard it was like 1958 or something like that. But yeah, that's a good point I hadn't even thought about, because they kept talking about on the broadcast Clemson playing a penalty-free game, and I had completely even forgot that was technically a flag on Clemson, but not a penalty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving on to that. Cade didn't really have a great game, but we were a very run-heavy offense. I think he started the game 1 for 6 and ended 13 for 26, which isn't great, but it's better than 1 for 6. So, this is another huge thing. Probably maybe one of the biggest reasons we won: 100% efficiency in the red zone.
Clemson has struggled with this season.
We are almost last in the entire country in red zone efficiency, but not on Saturday. And that's a big reason why we were able to win and even get out to a big early lead like that. Jeremiah Trotter, I think, is somebody that you have to mention when talking about this game. He had a huge first half. Just in the first half, he had a sack, an interception, and that interception was for a touchdown. And that interception happened with like 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. So really laying it on early was Jeremiah Trotter. Also, at the end of the first half, I kind of forgot about this moment live, but I recalled it on the rewatch. There's a huge goal line stand right before the end of the first half where Notre Dame gets 1st and goal from the 3, and we hold them to a field goal that they attempt from the 5. So that makes that field goal made the score 24-9 going into halftime. And a really dominant first half, maybe the best half of Clemson football we've seen all year.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you hold them like that to 3 field goals in the first half, a big defensive performance on Saturday, and you had 10 starters or 10 people who have started this season out Saturday. You had a lot of young guys in the secondary there, and a veteran presence at Trotter was the difference. But a lot of the young guys out there making big plays. I agree with you. I think that probably was the best half of football that Clemson all season.
Yeah, and you were talking about the young guys in the secondary, like just to name a few, like Avion Terrell had a great game. None of them are coming to mind anymore after I say that, but I know Avion Terrell in particular. Yeah, Khalil Barnes and Kylan Griffin had his first interception. Mm-hmm. They all contributed to like a team effort in the secondary. I already mentioned this play, but the punt pass option, love it. It was so well executed. I rewatched it. I didn't really notice it as much watching it live because we kind of thought they were just going to go for it, but it really is set up like a punt pass option where Cade is kind of rolling out a little bit. You have 2 receivers kind of crossing in the middle of the field. They're your cover guys if he does end up putting it, but also if they're wide open, he can throw it to him. And then he just ends up hitting a nice little back spinner down inside the 10, which is really impressive for a quarterback. So love that play. I loved it when we ran it with Deshaun, and glad it's back. The last point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't remember. Did Trevor ever attempt a punt like that? I remember Deshaun doing it.
Yeah, I can't think of any time where Trevor did it, but honestly, to be fair, there's probably not many opportunities where Trevor could have even punted. We moved the ball so well with him. Like pretty much if we were in plus territory, we were going to score. So I had one other point. I already mentioned this to Drew off air, but there were 2 bad snaps that really killed the drives that they occurred on. The first one literally killed the drive because it was a low snap rolled off the ground, and Cade had to pick it up. And he ended up making a really good decision hitting Bo Collins on a slant, but it bounces off Bo Collins and pops up into the arms of a defender who takes it down to like the 2 or 3 yard line, which Notre Dame then scores on the very next play. So that's one big mistake that happened in the first half. And then the other one is kind of in the fourth quarter when we're trying to ice the game and maybe could have finished it around this drive. It was 3rd and 4, and a first down puts us in field goal range, and we can just milk some clock. But instead we have a snap go over the head of Cade and ends up with 4th and long, forcing a punt in plus territory. So those are 2 big things. And I know they mentioned on the broadcast, so for anybody who was at the game and didn't watch the broadcast, they were mentioning that every time Notre Dame lined up their defensive tackle head on with Will Putnam was when the bad snaps occurred. So hopefully other teams aren't going to pick up on that, or at least hopefully Will Putnam will get some good practice on that in the ensuing weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So all around big week for the Tigers, a win that you needed desperately. And then something Dabo Swinney's been chasing for literally a month was to pass Coach Frank Howard on the all-time wins list. He did so Saturday, earned his 166th win to take sole possession as a career wins record for Clemson. I don't know if you saw the picture, but I always got a kick out of when Dabo got his first, where he notched his 100th win, and Tim Beret gave him a jersey with a 100 on it. There was a picture of him holding up a jersey with 166 on it. Something about a jersey with 3 digits on it just makes me laugh. It just looks so awkward.
It looks so bad. Like the numbers are like so close together and like stretching to the sides of the jersey.
Yeah. Clemson improved to 20-9 under Coach Swinney in rematches with opponents, and they lost their most recent meeting. Clemson improved to 5-3 all time against the Irish. They also improved to 39-4 against non-conference opponents at Death Valley, which is, I know we hadn't seen a lot of losses in the last few years, but the fact that Clemson's only lost 4 non-conference games under Dabo Swinney is pretty impressive. According to Stats Perform, Clemson became the first Power 5 team to defeat a starting quarterback 5 times since Miami did it against Florida State back in 2001 to 2004. Additionally, Sam Hartman has 6 losses to the Tigers. 5 of those he actually started. Clemson won the turnover margin Saturday. However, they still did give up 2 turnovers. It's the first positive turnover differential since September 30th against Syracuse. The talk of Saturday was Phil Mafah. He recorded a career-high 186 rushing yards on a school record, tying 36 carries. The game was Mafah's first 100-yard rushing game of the season and second of his career, joining last year's performance against Louisville when he racked up 106. Cade Klubnik, you talked about his stats already, completed 13 of 26, just 50% on the day, but they leaned very heavily on Mafah Saturday. He threw for 109 yards and a touchdown. Klubnik also recorded his first career punt, as you mentioned, a 37 yards. Instead of, I guess, a RPO, you got a PPO there for that one. Jeremiah Trotter recorded his 10th sack of his career in the first quarter. He also became the first Clemson linebacker to record multiple pick sixes in a career since Dorian O'Daniel did it between 2014 and 17. That pick six was Clemson's 3rd of the season, joining ones by Wade Woodaz and Nate Wiggins. Clemson's 3 interception returns for touchdowns this season are its most since 2017, when they have recorded 3, and are now just 1 shy of the single season school record. The Tigers racked up 4 pick sixes in 1990. You mentioned Kylan Griffin. He recorded his first career interception, and Aiden Swanson, maybe the MVP of the day, 5 of his 6 punts inside the 20, and Clemson collectively got 6 punts inside the 20. And then this is a stat that I know you and your dad, Gerald, will like. Hamp Green recorded 57 yards on 6 punt returns, both career highs. Green's 57 punt return yards were the most by a Clemson player since Amari Rogers' 57 against Wake Forest in 2019. So Hamp Green getting it done on the punt return this past weekend.
Yeah, I am going to relent a little bit on my Hamp Green criticism. He's okay to be on the field for punt return duty until Antonio Williams is back. I won't complain about it in that exact situation, but if he's on the field in any other situation, it's coming out of my mouth.
So moving on to notable games from this past weekend. I don't know about you, Matthew, but I didn't watch a ton of football other than Clemson's game. Really, the only other game I had a chance to watch was the LSU-Alabama game that night. And once Alabama started pulling away, I kind of cut it off because I was really rooting hard for LSU because I needed Alabama to have that second loss on the year.
Yeah, I did pretty much the exact same thing as you. I did not watch football other than the Clemson game and a little bit of this LSU Alabama game, but like you said, I think it was around mid to late third quarter once Alabama started pulling away. Yeah.
That first half though, LSU and Alabama just trading blow for blow. I thought we were in for an all-time great game because between those two quarterbacks, that was an exciting bit of offense to watch. Not a lot of defense played in Tuscaloosa that night.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the only other notable game I got on here, but of note, interest to Clemson fans with Coach Brent Venables, the last bedlam with Oklahoma moving to the SEC. The Sooners drop a heartbreaker 27-24. So Oklahoma State will have that on the Sooners as they exit the conference and head to the SEC next year.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is back-to-back that Oklahoma's dropped, but it is a very tough stretch of their schedule. And I know I said it last week that I don't expect Oklahoma to really take much more steps back this season. I think they're going to still be pretty high up, finishing in the Big 12 standings.
And speaking of taking a step back, if you got septic tank issues, you're going to take a big step back. Now's a good time to plug our sponsor, Pump Monkey Septic Service, owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell. If you have septic tank issues or even think or suspect, give them a call at 864-710-2211. Those septic tank issues are not something you want to be in a bind with. So give them a call. They'll come out, give you an estimate, check you out. And if you don't need the work done, they're not going to do it. So give them a call. Follow them on Facebook or Instagram. That phone number one more time is 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
Twitter polls.
All right, Twitter poll of the week. First off, if you don't follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, you don't have the opportunity to participate. So be sure to follow at Nachos_analysis on Twitter. Get your voice heard. Participate in the vote. Leave a comment. We'll read them on air. But this week's question, with Military Appreciation Day coming up this weekend, what is your favorite Military Appreciation Day tradition? The options were purple uniforms, the flyover, the halftime show, and the Bowman Field display with all the different military vehicles out there. Before Matthew and I give our thoughts and we reveal the results, we'll take a look at some of the comments on Twitter. Cindy says flyover, halftime, and Bowman Field should be the top picks, not the purple uniforms, just saying. Peter Marvin gets in and says, being part of the halftime show and being a fan in the stands, it's the most quiet Death Valley ever gets. It's incredible. Ryan Jones says, gathering at the Paw after the game. That's always fun. And then let me click over here on my phone because for some reason the app's not loading our quote retweets. We had a handful of quote retweets. Dabo Uniform Tracker says Camo Dabo is the only acceptable answer. Dabo Swinney rocking those camo breeches every year. John Chancey says, my buddy Dave hates the purple unis. He says they look like pajamas. I love to remind him each year when the Tigers will wear them. And then lastly, Brandon gets in. I voted halftime show where former men and women of Clemson University are honored for their military service, accomplishments, and dedication to our country. So, again, the options were purple uniforms, the flyover, the halftime show, and the Bowman Field military vehicle display. Matthew, which of these did you vote for?
I didn't get in on voting on this one, but I would have probably voted for purple uniforms just because I love them. Like, they hold a very near and dear place in my heart. So I would say that just because growing up is really when purple uniforms kind of started taking off, and they're so rare nowadays that I gotta appreciate them when we get them. I do want to say though that the flyover usually is amazing for the military appreciation game, and we had a really good one last week. They came at it.
They had a mishap this past week.
They came at it sideways, and they ended up not flying the long way of the field. They flew kind of the sideways of the field from sideline to sideline, but they came over completely inverted, 90 degrees straight up and down to the ground, which was pretty cool to see. Also, I mean, I might be a bad Clemson fan / student for this, but I didn't know about the Bowman Field stuff until this year. I just found out about it recently in my internship, but I do really like when we have the paw painted on Bowman Field, and now right now there's
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've known of the Bowman Field display, but just based on logistics and where we've always parked and tailgated, we've never ended up over there. That's not somewhere we end up on game days. I'm going to go with the halftime show. I know a lot of the times with us gathering and having our nachos and analysis time in the concourse there, we don't see it a lot, but whenever I am still in my seats and that's happening, that's always a special moment. So my vote was for the halftime show. As for our Twitter followers, the results shook out like this. Bowman Field display, just 3% of the vote. The halftime, 5%. The flyover, 32%. And the winner, they agree with Matthew, the all-purple uniforms with 40% of the vote. I personally... I love Clemson using purple as an accent color, and this is probably contradictory to what I've said on the show many times. My favorite game of all time is Georgia Tech 2006 when they showed up at the top of the hill wearing the all purple. But I think that was a little bit of, we hadn't seen it before, and it was a little bit of a surprise kind of thing. So I don't mind the one time a year where you break out the purple. I'm glad it's not something that we do all the time quite like we did. Within the first couple of years when Dabo broke it out, we would wear purple mixed in there. But yeah, it's kind of nice. It's cool to see the fans get involved in the stadium, which is normally all orange. A pretty decent amount purple on those military appreciation games.
Yeah, and I want to give a quick shout out to last year's military appreciation game where we wore my favorite uniform combo since it was a division championship game, right?
Yep.
So yeah, division championship and military appreciation on the same day. So we ran the purple on orange. So shout out to that. Maybe unfortunately we're not in competition for division, or we don't even have a division this year, but we're not in competition for top two either.
Yeah. No more divisions. And something kind of off topic that I was hearing discussed earlier today on another show, but next year begins the 12-team playoff. I think this season, for the first time in a very long time, there's not a clear-cut dominant team, and there's a lot of parity, it seems, in the top 25 this season. I wish that the 12-team playoff started this year. I feel like the way that you got a lot of good teams, not necessarily a bunch of great teams, I feel like a 12-team playoff this season would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be, because you got to think about, even your top teams like Florida State and Ohio State and Michigan, they've all had some close games, and Ohio State's got a tester coming up this week against Penn State. So I think you're right. I wish 12-team playoff was here, but maybe we're just saying that because if it was 4 teams and Clemson was in contention, we might want it to be 4 teams.
I was talking about it with my parents the other day. It used to be like clockwork every Tuesday night at, I guess, was it 7 or 8 o'clock when the playoff committee would release their new top 25. I would sit down and watch that every single week. I couldn't tell you the last time I watched that show.
I keep accidentally getting on Twitter like Tuesday night or Wednesday morning and seeing it posted, and like I've completely forgotten that that's a thing that happens on Tuesday nights now.
Hadn't really involved Clemson in a little while. So no guest this week. I haven't mentioned this to you, Matthew. I thought if I could find it on my computer, something we could post separately was our interview with Daniel Rodriguez last year.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
We had him on to preview the military appreciation game last year. So if I can find it, we might post that again this year. But we do not have a guest this week. But I did want to shout out a buddy of mine who is actually just recently retired from the military and is having his retirement party this Saturday. It was actually something that I was kind of anxious about because I told him a couple months ago that I was going to show up to his retirement party, and I was worried this Georgia Tech game coming up could potentially be a night game and ruin or put me in a bind at least to have to make a decision I didn't want to make. But thankfully we got a noon kickoff. But did want to shout out Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Florence. Was a 2004 Air Force Academy graduate. He flew an MH-53. Now, I'm probably going to mess this up, Daniel, so don't beat me up for this one. But is it Pave or Pablo helicopter and a CV-22 Osprey under the Air Force Special Operations Command? He completed 6 combat deployments supporting special ops forces across the globe and is retiring after 20 years of service this Saturday on November 11th, appropriately on Veterans Day. So shout out to you, Daniel. Thank you for being a great friend. Thank you for your service. So, big weekend is my favorite weekends every year when we say appreciation.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction? I'm still having camera issues. It's okay. There we go. We're focused now. Fact or fiction number 1: Phil Mafah played his way into the starting role. It doesn't say this on the sheet, but I'm going to say for the remainder of the season.
Since this is me participating in this fact or fiction and not Dabo Swinney, I'm going to go with what I think Dabo's going to do. I think Phil Mafah did earn himself a starting role. Do I think when Will Shipley is healthy, Dabo will put him back in that starting role? Yes. So I'm going to say fiction, even though I disagree with it.
Yeah, I'm saying that he did enough to play his way in. So I'm saying fact. I'm saying he needs to be. I think personally, Mafah needs to be the feature back from here on out, and until at least his hot hand and streak right now, where he's been running really hard, goes away. But Shipley at least isn't going to be 100% for the Georgia Tech game coming up this week. So expect lots of Mafah again, which is going to be good. But I just hope it continues once Shipley's back 100%. I would really like to see them switch roles and kind of have Mafah run a similar role to he did against Notre Dame, getting heavy carries and pounding him pretty much. And then Shipley coming in as like the Dominique Thomas relief back, comes in on the 2 back sets and just presents an extra threat because, no offense to Dominique Thomas, but Shipley has him on size and speed. So I think that's just going to make our offense a lot more dynamic by putting Mafah in, starting it out.
And one big difference you can see when Mafah is in there, especially Saturday, how many times this season have you seen Will Shipley just burst through a hole and just run up on the back of somebody? Phil Mafah's patience Saturday, especially with, and I'm not the X's and O's guy on this show. I'm just repeating something that I heard because I love football. I've watched football my entire life, and I am no expert. But the zone blocking scheme that the offensive line was going with this weekend and his patience, I think, was a big part of the success Saturday. So nothing against Will Shipley, but I hope he took a couple notes on Saturday.
No, yeah, on that point, I think we game planned for a bit more of a zone running scheme because it's what you kind of do with a weaker offensive line, and we had a lot of starting offensive linemen out, especially at left tackle, I believe. I just had some pieces moving around on there, so I don't see. Let me think of how to say this. Watching the tape from Saturday, I don't see how the coaches could think about going back to the power running scheme with the pulling guards and tackles and sometimes tight ends, just because I think our starting offensive linemen aren't that much better than our backups to me. So I think it's going to put us in a more advantageous position to let the running backs read the holes in zone and not just try to open them with pulling linemen. So I agree with that point a lot. I think that's something that needs to be made, or at least a point that needs to be made, like that the coaches need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Fact or fiction, Aiden Swanson was Saturday's MVP, and the special teams won Clemson the game Saturday.
See, that's a two-parter, so I'm going fiction on the first part, at least. I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is the MVP. Aiden Swanson is definitely honorable mention, maybe his best game of his career, and the best punting performance Clemson has seen since, the rare Will Spires complete games. So, I want to give that to Jeremiah Trotter, but I do think special teams does play a very big role in why we won the game. We kept the field position shifted on Notre Dame or Clemson side of the field pretty much the entire game. Every time Notre Dame had to score, they had to drive down the entire field. So, yeah, special teams was huge. I think Jeremiah Trotter's impact might be a little bit bigger.
I'm going to go fact here. I think that, and I wish I would have jotted down the field position, but the field position was not in Notre Dame's favor really at all on Saturday, and that's a big part of Aiden Swanson and special teams as a whole. We talked about Hamp Green and his performance of 57 return yards in the punting game or the punt return game. So I'm going to go differently, and I'm going to say that is the reason Clemson won the game, and I'm going to say that Aiden Swanson was our MVP.
Got a good argument.
Fact or fiction, Tyler from Spartanburg still is not satisfied.
This one's pretty funny. I'm saying fiction. I think Tyler went through a very big humbling experience this past week. He had so much media attention, and I don't think he even realized in the moment when it was happening what it was going to become. So I think once he realized all the attention was going to be on him this week, that he didn't like it. So I'm going with that. I'd say fiction, let alone Clemson goes out and plays their best game of the year right after he comes in and lambasts our head coach. So, I think it's fiction, but I appreciate Tyler for what he did. He took a sacrifice for the rest of us.
I'm going to disagree yet again. I don't think he's satisfied. I don't know if you had a chance to read his article on Tiger Illustrated with Larry Williams. Even in Clemson's height, when it was Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence and you're going 15-0, he referenced in that article just how pessimistic he was and worried and scared that something was going to go wrong. The ball was going to bounce the wrong way. I think he was relieved Saturday, but I don't know that he was satisfied, especially if he watched those 3 consecutive drives that I watched there in the third quarter where the offense was going 3 and out and couldn't get the ball moving to put the game away. So I'm going to say fact. He is not satisfied. And Monday morning I was listening to Mickey Plyler's show. He said someone matter of some Notre Dame fans that had Tyler from Spartanburg Notre Dame t-shirts on.
That's kind of funny. That reminded me of one point that I forgot to make during the game or during like our recap of the game. But watching the game there, I felt like Clemson was in control most of the game and played a pretty dominant game, especially that first half going up 24-6, 24-9. But rewatching it wasn't as dominant as it felt. You have early in the game Notre Dame Mafah punt that gives us field position inside the 20. You also have Barrett Carter either. Jeremiah Trotter. Jeremiah Trotter had that pick six, and then we had that third quarter interception that Notre Dame scored immediately off of. So there was Notre Dame was in this game. It didn't feel like it very much in the stadium. I don't know about you if you would agree with that, but I mean, look, they did have a chance to come back and make it score, but I never felt like we were out of control of that game.
No. Like in the moment, I was not worried, but no, I see what you're saying. Kind of going back and looking at it, Clemson left a door open for some opportunities for Notre Dame to come back if they were able to.
Yeah, and Notre Dame gave us the opportunities. They pretty much did what Clemson has been doing all season by giving us the opportunities to even go up 24-6 on them in the first half. So it's kind of just a role reversal just to see how different the game feels when you're not the one turning the ball over.
Yeah, we still did it 2 times, but I do like being on this side of it, at least the victory side of it.
Yeah.
Let's recap
Weekly picks.
our Week 10 picks. As always, Matthew and I each week give out a favorite, an underdog, an over, and an under pick for that week's games. Looking back at last week, Matthew finished the week going 2 of 4.
Well, technically, I went 2-1-1 because I had a wash.
Oh, yes, true. Yes, yeah, you did have there. Didn't you have one last week too?
It wasn't last week. I didn't have a wash, but I did have one early in the season when I was on my hot streak where my first miss of the season was a wash. I would have been 8-0 to start the season.
Yeah, that game Matthew's talking about was Texas A&M Ole Miss. Ole Miss was a 3-point favorite there and won by 3. You did hit your underdog with Georgia Tech +2 at Virginia.
I think they won by like 31 or something. It was not even close.
Yeah, that was not a close one. Georgia Tech gets their first win in an odd number game, so that streak we talked about last week does come to an end. So Clemson could go ahead and just not worry about the loss coming up this week. Tigers can take care of business. Your under did hit FSU at Pitt. I don't know what the final score was there, but the over-under was 51. And then you and I both picked this game for different picks, the Army-Air Force game. That game, I can't remember the final score, but that was a huge upset by Air Force.
Yeah, Air Force, I know when I turned it off, I was kind of keeping an eye on that score since it was on our picks. But when I turned it off, Air Force was the one that was up 18 points on Army, and Army was favored by 18.
So 2 points for Matthew. His season total is 18. I get 3 points. Only game I missed on was the game we've been talking about this entire show, the Clemson Notre Dame game. I did take Notre Dame -2.5 points. I did take Army versus Air Force, picked Air Force to cover there. The over in Ohio State Rutgers hit, and the under in Missouri Georgia hit as well. So 23 points on the season for me, 18 for Matthew. And each week when we get to this segment, I'm reminded that I have not reached out to who I need to reach out to about our punishment. So the season's winding down.
Yeah, getting close. You're pulling away a little bit. That's 2 weeks in a row where you've gotten a 5, or like total combined for those 2 weeks. You've gone up 5 points in the last 2 weeks. So not looking good. The streak, hopefully this is like basketball and it's a game of runs and your run is going to end pretty soon.
I hope not, but yes. And speaking of basketball, I know we don't cover Clemson basketball that much, but Tiger defense looked good Monday night in Little John. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. Clemson beats Winthrop by like 22 points, I think.
Yeah, I did not watch. I did see it was going on, and I think women's basketball opened up this week too. But
Also
yeah,
against Winthrop.
yeah, I thought I saw that too. I don't feel like that's pretty unheard of that happens, or the schedule just happens to work out that way. But yeah, it should be a good season for Clemson basketball.
We'll see.
All right, with my favorite this week, I've called him out before in this podcast, and I'm actually going to follow through and pick them this week, finally in week 11, going Texas Tech at Kansas. Kansas is favored by 4.5 in this game. I think Kansas has a good chance to win that by a touchdown or more.
I considered that game with my pick. I went to the Big 12 with this week's pick in the matchup at Penn State. Michigan is a 5-point favorite on the road. I think Michigan's 10 points better. I know this game's on the road, so it might be a little bit closer than that, but I think the Wolverines win by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, I really thought about that one too. I'm just unsure with everything going on in Michigan's program right now of whether or not they're going to be able to keep it up on the field. So, especially without getting the other team signs. So, moving to underdog, I'm going to the SEC, staying in state though. Vanderbilt at South Carolina. Vanderbilt's a +14 underdog on the road in Columbia, but South Carolina just played a close one with Jacksonville State, and Vanderbilt is way better than Jacksonville State. So I think that one's going to be a little closer than Gamecocks would like.
Yep, Gamecocks beat the Gamecocks last week, and it was a close one. For my underdog pick, I'm staying in the ACC. Miami goes on the road to Tallahassee. They're a 14-point dog on the road, and with it being a rivalry game and Miami being able to play with the potential they do have, they're kind of like Clemson. They don't necessarily always play to their potential. I think with the rivalry game, I think it'll be a tighter game than that. So Miami +14.
I like that. I'm going to Big 12 territory, Battle of Texas for the over pick. That's Texas at TCU ±53.5 right now. I mean, Texas has a pretty good defense, and TCU's offense is not what it was last year, but I'm just betting on Big 12 here.
There you go. Can't go wrong with that. I'm in the the SEC for my over. Alabama on the road at Kentucky. The over-under is set at 46.5. I think Alabama could do that themselves if they wanted to.
Yeah, maybe. But Kentucky has played well this year, and Kentucky's defense is their strength. So that's a really low under, though. And staying in the state of South Carolina once again for my under pick, I'm going Georgia Tech at Clemson. That is ±55.5 at the moment. And Clemson got the offense going a little bit last week, but not really. If you really go back and watch the game, it was a lot of help from Notre Dame. So defense is going to reign supreme here for Clemson, and we might put up 20 points.
I'm probably going to regret this, but anytime I see a big number, I'm like, that's a big number. They're not going to score that many points. So Oregon at USC, over under set at 73.5. I don't know. I was struggling finding an under pick. I feel like this is not even going to be close, but we shall see.
Yeah, I saw that one too and considered it, but I also could see it hitting the over there. So I did want to point out before we move on to previewing the Georgia Tech game, I don't know if you checked out the Iowa-Rutgers line this week. Did you see what that's at? It's at 28.
Is it 28.5?
28 for those of you listening and aren't degenerates checking gambling lines all the time. 28 points total in that Iowa-Rutgers game. Those are two Big Ten defenses and no offense. So I thought about picking that for my under, but I had typed in the Georgia Tech at Clemson under like first thing, but before I even really looked at lines.
Yeah, like in today's college football, you see 28 points, you're like, you got to hit the over. But Iowa and whoever they're playing always finds a way to keep it low scoring. You will not catch me watching those games.
I'd rather watch a triple option offense run.
Honestly, I mean, I like watching a triple. I can't.
We both said this. We both messed it up in the same exact way too.
Triple option offense. I didn't mind watching Georgia Tech when they weren't playing Clemson back when Paul Johnson was there. It's just a fascinating offense to watch. And I grew up playing in the wing T, so I like watching offenses like that. But yeah, I'm not going to watch a game where both teams might end up with 7 points at the end of regulation.
I don't think anybody's blaming you. I don't even think the Iowa or Rutgers faithful are going to tune in. So.
Yeah, the only thing Iowa has going for it is the tradition. Was it heading into the fourth quarter where they turn around and wave to the kids in the children's hospital? So other than that, that's probably the most exciting thing that happens at an Iowa football game.
Well, defense, great defense.
Yeah, great defense. All right, let's preview this weekend's military appreciation matchup with Georgia Tech. This is always something that I just have completely forgotten and am reminded of every year, but Clemson does trail in the overall series by quite a lot. Georgia Tech leads the series 51-35 with 2 ties. Clemson leads the series at home. You see all those games there. You're pushing 90 games between the two programs, and only 23 games have been played at Death Valley. A lot of those games played in Atlanta for all those years, but Clemson leads the home series 17-6. The last meeting was last September 5th when the Tigers won 41-10. Clemson's currently on an 8-game winning streak against the Yellow Jackets. On the season, Georgia Tech is 5-4 and 4-2 in the ACC. So they've done much better than Clemson has in conference play so far this season, with wins against Miami and North Carolina, a team that Clemson lost to, and then North Carolina is coming to Clemson next week. The Yellow Jackets are one of 8 schools against whom Clemson has earned at least 30 all-time victories. The other schools, South Carolina, Wake Forest, NC State, Furman, Virginia, North Carolina, and Duke. Clemson is facing Georgia Tech's head coach, Brent Key, for the first time. Last offseason, Key became the first interim coach at an ACC institution elevated to a full-time head coaching role since Dabo Swinney accomplished it in 2008. And then Clemson has a 25-4 record in the previous 29 military appreciation games, and is currently on a 15-game win streak. The last loss coming in 2007 against Virginia Tech. So Dabo Swinney has never lost in those camo pants as head coach on Military Appreciation Day.
Very interesting. I'm thinking I'm gonna bring out the camo pants this weekend too. So I'll see you out there.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and warn the listeners that Military Appreciation camo hat that I wore earlier in the season that me and Matthew talked about, I'm breaking it out this weekend. So,
well, I mean, we can go ahead and start talking about our thoughts on the game, but I think it's still not even worth the risk.
But it's going to go with the fit. I got a perfect sweatshirt to wear with it.
Okay, then I'm not going to get in the way of pulling off a fit. So, but getting into the game a little bit, I'm still not expecting very much after the big win last week. Turnovers were still a problem against Notre Dame, but we were making big plays when we needed to. And that's a thing that happened too against Florida State, where we still turned the ball over, but we were making the big plays when we needed to. I just almost get the feeling that we were playing up for Florida State and Notre Dame, and we're going to be back down to our regular football team on Saturday. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Georgia Tech has had an above average season this year. They haven't had this good of a chance to beat us in over a decade. So I think they're going to be very, I don't know exactly the wording I want to use there, but they're going to be looking to take that upset, and you take that chance, the biggest chance they've had to beat us. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I'm very surprised by the line. I believe it's 14 or 14 and a half right now in this game. I know Clemson just beat Notre Dame last week, but I don't know. Kind of like you, I'm waiting for that letdown game to creep back up, because I too agree. I think that they played up for the Florida State and Notre Dame game, and then you've seen some of these other games where they've just completely dropped the ball, literally, with the turnovers. So I don't know. I'm this week. I'm still going into this game with no expectations. I will say, doing this podcast a couple of days following a Clemson win is much more enjoyable than doing it after a Clemson loss. So I am in a good headspace and feel more confident than I did last week. But I don't know. I'm not going to be a fool and get my hopes up this week. I think Clemson still wins, but it might not look as pretty as it did this past Saturday and some of those shining moments that the team has had this season.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you. Last week my goal for Saturday was to get drunk and have fun at the football game, and I achieved that. It was a great time, and was drinking. Actually, well, I guess we can shout out the drink on the podcast. At first I started the morning with bourbon and coffee, and then I ended up switching. We had a caramel flavored vodka, and putting that in the coffee was like kind of like just the caramel flavoring you'd get in like a Starbucks type drink. So maybe making a return to that this Saturday morning.
That Chick-fil-A hot coffee came in clutch on Saturday when it was 30 whatever degrees whenever we got out. We were all just sitting under. And that was the thing I pointed out to somebody. It was the first time I've ever noticed we set up 2 tents and not a single person standing under it, because about 10 o'clock the sun comes out and we're all standing off to the side. You can see everybody's breath and drinking hot coffee, but no one hanging out underneath those tents that we put up with our numb fingers at 8 o'clock.
I'm not even a coffee drinker, and I drank like 5 or 6 cups of coffee that Saturday morning, just because of how cold it was.
Yeah, it was cold. It ended up being a great day. So, got a score prediction for this week?
Yeah, I think I am going to pick Clemson to win, but the only reason is because of Clemson's defense. And I think they just outmatched the Georgia Tech offense. And I think our offense is going to be able to do just enough to squeak it out. So I'm going 24-17 Clemson.
All right. I think the offense is going to do a little bit more than that. I don't think Clemson covers the spread. I got Clemson winning 34-24. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know. But hey, no expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia Tech is definitely going to score. They have a lot of athletes on their team, and our offense is bound to put them in a position to score. We even did it in a game we seemingly dominated last week. So, no shutouts in this. Even though this defense is very talented, I don't think there's a shutout in its future.
Not as much with the amount of pressure the offense has put on this defense. No, I don't see that happening either. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 12. Join us next week as we review this Georgia Tech game and preview Clemson's final home game of the season against North Carolina as they come to Death Valley before the Tigers hit the road for the final regular season game in Columbia. But thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace. Okay, end of episode. I'm shouting out, it's Christmas in Nachos and Analysis office. I have my tree set up behind me. It's 3 feet tall, so. I had it up on my table before, but you couldn't see it. I thought you had been able to see my table in previous episodes, but I might have changed the camera angle. Also, Drew, you want to guess the game that I have on? My hints are pre-Dabo, and I did not go.
Pre-Dabo, you did not go.
So that only narrows it down to like 500 games that it could possibly be.
Is it one of those Woodrow Dantzler Georgia Tech game?
It's not that old. It is. It's back. Last week I was in 2004. I'm back in 2004. I don't know if you want to make another 2004 guess. I honestly forgot that this game existed. I had to look up the score when I put it on. I was like, did we even win this game?
2004. A regular season game?
Mm-hmm.
Like 2004. Texas A&M. Or was that 2005?
I think that was 2005 actually, but it is Miami 2004.
Miami.
We went to Miami, and I was watching it earlier. This was the first meeting of Clemson Miami since like 1958 or something, and at this point Miami had led the series 6-1. And the last game that they had played was a Clemson win in the 50s, and this was in 2004. So
was this their first year in the league, or I guess it was at least the first time we played them?
yeah, it's at least the first time I don't know exactly when Miami joined the ACC, but it's at least the first time we played them in conference play. So, but we got the win. They were highly ranked, number 10 going into this game, and I think they had only one loss before. So, and we were 4-4 going into this game. So similar place to where we are right now.
Yeah.
That's a coincidence, but.
Yeah. I didn't know if you went complete deep dive looking for
No.
4-4 matchups.
No, that would have been insane.